You know who I love? John Carpenter. He's my favourite director, and he's become such a pop culture icon I barely feel the need to explain why. I mean, I will anyway, because this is a video and I'm sitting here alone in my room, so why not? First of all, much like his directing style, his concepts are agonisingly simple. People trapped in a police station under siege by a gang of psychotic hoodlums, emotionless psychopath and embodiment of evil escapes from an institution on Halloween, college students go to an old church to study a canister that contains the essence of the Antichrist, a convict is sent to a prison island to rescue the president, a seaside village enveloped in a fog that contains pirate ghosts. Seriously, back in the 70s and 80s this man could not be stopped. He couldn't have made a bad movie if Amazon gave him $1 billion to do specifically that. That said, his career cooled somewhat in the 90s with some underperforming efforts, and Carpenter Sensei has yet to grace the director's chair since 2010's The Ward, starring Amber Heard as a woman who's been institutionalized, and I'm not entirely sure this isn't autobiographical at this point. And I think I speak for the precisely 3 other people who saw that movie when I say that it was no way for a master such as John Carpenter to end a storied film career. Thankfully, it wouldn't be the last time we'd see the maestro's name on the big screen, as he would provide the soundtrack for 2018's frustratingly titled Halloween. As I've never reviewed any of the Halloween movies, I feel obligated to provide a brief rundown of my own opinions on each one as far as I can remember them, so here goes. The original, of course, is a suspense classic. It ranks as being among few slashers alongside Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas that are also legitimate horror films. Although I love the film, it is probably among Carpenter's weakest of his heyday, but hey, when one of your weaker movies basically defined a whole subgenre, then I doubt you'd be crying over a few 3-star ratings. I personally am a fan of Halloween 2, even if it does get some flack even from Carpenter himself, who reportedly wrote the film over a pack of beer. It's definitely flawed, but it maintains the Carpenter style despite not being directed by him, and it contains more than a few nods to Italian giallo films. Halloween 3 is probably my favourite Halloween sequel, shocking to some since it's the only one that doesn't contain Michael Myers in it at all. In fact, the idea was for the series to become an anthology, churning out another film with different stories and characters each year. A fantastic idea which unfortunately never materialised, but we did get this bizarre gem of a film out of it. It was originally written by Nigel Kneale of the Quatermass series fame, only to be replaced by Tommy Lee Wallace, who also directed it. Flawed? Sure, but it's an atmospheric oddity with tons of weird ideas and sports probably the best villain outside of a Bond film in the diabolical Conal Cochran. Hell, when was the last time a Bond movie ended with a mass genocide of children? But with that going down like Drag Queen Story Hour, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, would see the return of Michael Myers, who despite being shot in both eyes and blown to bits in Halloween 2, is seen to be alive and well and rearing to kill his next of kin as usual. Even Dr. Loomis proves himself to be made of galvanized steel as he returns with only a mild set of facial scars for his trouble. As it is, Halloween 4 is a fine enough movie, nothing special, but it sports some fine set pieces and some of the best Dr. Loomis moments of the series. Halloween 5 is where it all starts to go to hell, quite literally. The film is boring and unmemorable and is only slightly surpassed by its sequel Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, in which Michael Myers is revealed to be the vessel for a curse which forces him to kill his entire family for some fucking reason. The introduction of the Thorn cult to the series and a pants-on-head retarded effort to explain Michael's murderousness was a massive misstep to rival Paul Rudd's performance. It's shit, and no, the producer's cut isn't any better. In H2O, we find out Laurie Strode is actually alive and well under an assumed name, and albeit constantly looking over her shoulder. It's good fun and ends with a memorable cat and mouse sequence between Michael and Laurie. I will say that it does give off massive Scream vibes with the smart-ass dialogue, and that makes sense when you consider that Kevin Williamson was involved in the writing process. It also sports one of the goofier-looking masks of the series, but I'd mark it as one of the better films in the series. Resurrection? I mean, come on guys, this movie is hilarious. Not only does it start off with one of the most ridiculous and nonsensical retcons since Dallas having an entire season be a fucking dream, it culminates in Busta Rhymes having a martial arts fight with Michael Myers. Whoever wrote this film was not taking it seriously, and neither should you. Shit, shitter, and then we come to the beginning of what would be a trilogy of Halloween films, Halloween 2018. This film completely ignores everything from 2 onwards and is basically a direct sequel to the first film. 40 years after Michael's escape from Smith's Grove Sanitarium resulted in a killing spree and me getting a weird feeling every time I see William Shatner, Mike's back in the funny farm and he gets a visit from a couple of roaming true crime broadcasters. No need to remember their names, they die about half an hour into the movie and pretty much amount to nothing. Laurie Strode is now a crazy prepper lady that lives in a fortress surrounded by bullet-riddled mannequins and is pretty much batshit insane. This, for me, is where the film's strength resides. She has an arsenal that would make Burt Gummer from Tremors feel inadequate, shows up at her granddaughter's graduation party babbling about killing a man, and appears inside her daughter's house with a revolver just to scare the living shit out of her because she doesn't have a 12-inch steel front door and 16 Dobermans patrolling at all times. All of this in reaction to someone who apparently hasn't even set foot outside of the mental mansion for 4 decades straight. Michael naturally escapes on Halloween night, and once again the streets of Haddonfield are painted red with the blood of retards. It's a fine enough retread, and I'd recommend it if you're looking for a decent modern slasher. Speaking of retards, Halloween Kills is filled with them. It continues on from the night in the previous film, and here we're introduced to Tommy Doyle from the original film, now a man in his 50s with male pattern baldness, a bum knee and a prostate the size of Mount Vesuvius. It is he who leads the charge as the people of Haddonfield finally decide to rise up and deliver mob justice unto some fat dumpy mental patient who looks absolutely nothing like Michael Myers, because this film is fucking dumb. It's a farce almost from the very beginning. It's not that the idea of crowd hysteria isn't a valid route for a Halloween movie to go down, but the way it's done is utter fucking clown shoes. Almost no one in this movie is safe from being portrayed as a total simpleton, to the point where you quickly realise Michael Myers may actually be performing a public service by offing these people. As previously mentioned, the people of Haddonfield chase down a 4-foot-tall Danny DeVito-looking motherfucker, somehow thinking it's Michael, while chanting the tailor-made trailer line, "Evil dies tonight," incessantly. When the guy yeets himself out of a window and everyone realises just what a gaggle of raging shitheads they've been, their reaction is, "Look at what Michael has turned us into!" Excuse me, Michael had nothing to do with this. He was down the road homophobically killing 2 gay guys at the time. This is on you. And let's not forget the disrespectful and hilariously awful recreation of the late Donald Pleasance for a flashback to the 78 killings. Part of me cannot believe they did this, but engaging in computer-generated necromancy seems to be a growing habit for mainstream media nowadays. Finally, we get to Halloween Ends, which should have been marketed with either the subtitles "Hopefully" or "Thank God." Instead of simply continuing the story of the previous 2 movies, we are treated to a time skip to 4 years later. Allison is now living with Grandma Laurie and working at the local hospital. Meanwhile, we're introduced to a new character, Corey Cunningham. Corey is an outcast ever since he accidentally killed a kid he was babysitting on Halloween 2019. He also has a stereotypically overbearing Jewish mother, and I'm not sure which I'd find more stressful. He gets bullied by some teenagers and Laurie Strode takes pity on him, so she does what any responsible grandmother would do, try to set the troubled boy up with her granddaughter. Splendid idea. This could not possibly have any adverse ramifications. If you're about an hour into this movie and are wondering where the hell Michael is, then join the fucking club, because most of the movie doesn't have him in it. Instead, we're given this almost introspective character study that doesn't really amount to anything in the long run. From a certain point on, it seems like some sort of passing of the torch movie in which Michael, who by this point must be collecting state social security, passes his evil and apparently his super strength along to the unjustly put upon Corey. As previously stated, the idea doesn't amount to a whole lot. Laurie realises pretty quickly that Corey is cuckoo and starts to regret trying to marry her granddaughter off to a burgeoning bell tower sniper. So towards the end, Laurie confronts Corey, shooting him a couple of times. Then Corey goes, "If I can't have her, no one can," and then stabs himself in the neck. Then Laurie has a fight with Michael Myers, the whole town gets together and stuffs his body in a meat grinder, and everyone seems to forget that Corey ever existed. That's it. It's almost as if someone took a script about an incel going postal and Malika Akkad snuck in through the window and added a few scenes with Michael Myers. Is it a bad movie? Well, it has some good moments, and one does feel some level of sympathy for Corey early on, at least until the movie has to justify making him the villain by suggesting that the evil was always within him or some such bullshit. There's some fun death scenes, and far be it from me to complain about a Halloween movie barely having Michael Myers in it. Like I said, my favourite Halloween movie is number 3, and that movie replaced Michael Myers with a megalomaniacal warlock Irishman. But overall, it's kind of weak. It missteps immediately by time-skipping instead of finishing off the night of 2018, and a lack of a proper resolution for the Corey plotline, you know, the one that takes up 85% of the fucking movie, leaves it all feeling uneven. While the first film was to an extent a modern retread of the original, and the second was an unintentionally hilarious farce, Halloween Ends is just kind of there. dreary, uneven, and not really all that entertaining. It ends up just being a disappointing capstone to a disappointing trilogy. With David Gordon Green supposedly helming a new Exorcist trilogy, because hey, if at first you don't succeed and whatnot, I put a message out to Mr. Carpenter. Put down those newfangled video garms and take up the directing helm once again. It's not too late to give us a proper sequel to Halloween 3 and turn the series into what it really should have been since 2. Either that or give us Escape from Earth already. I don't care if Kurt Russell is in his 70s, he still has more testosterone than all of the modern male acting talent combined. It's time for the men to take control again. Do not disappoint us, sir. I'm DeadEye, and may you ride the night to the morning sun.